Leadership is a science in and of itself. It's a whole field of discipline that is separate, and you don't get exposed to that in your medical training.
The Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine at Washington State University emphasizes leadership as part of its curriculum for medical doctors. Founding Dean John Tomkowiak talked with us about why leadership training is so crucial. Welcome to Viewscapes, stories from Washington State Magazine, connecting you to Washington State University, the state, and the world. Later in this episode, WSU bioengineering researcher Arda Gozin talks with magazine writer Allison Boston about another exciting advancement in medical and health sciences, 3D printing of cartilage.
I'm John Tomkowiak. I'm the founding dean of the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine.
Thanks for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
I have been fascinated by this idea of teaching leadership to medical students. And it's something I think is a hallmark of the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine. So my first question to you is, why teach leadership to medical students?
I think that question really leads to an important question that we asked when we started this college, which was, what do our communities and our healthcare organizations across the state of Washington need in future healthcare practitioners? And when I got here in 2015, I actually did a tour of the state, meeting with community leaders, meeting with healthcare executives, and I asked that question. And at the top of everyone's list was this idea of, we need our physicians to be better leaders. And that came through both from the community and from these healthcare executives. And when I dug in a little bit more, they said, our current physician population, we're constantly wanting to put them in leadership positions, whether it's in the clinic or in the hospital, maybe leading a committee or leading an initiative. And they really don't have the leadership skills that we expect them to. And so it would be great if we'd have a better trained workforce. And then on the community side, it was sort of the same response. Is, we often ask physicians in our community to step up and, join a board or, take part of leading an initiative in the community. And they aren't, so somewhat surprisingly, they're not very good at it.
I can definitely see how that would be a necessity then for education, not just an extra, but something that's integral to their education.
Absolutely. And, this is really an insight that I had through a mentor of mine when I was in the middle of my career. He suggested that I pursue some kind of leadership training myself. And I ended up landing at Gonzaga at the Masters of Organizational Leadership program, which they had just put online at the time. So I was in Florida at Florida State University, and I took that program online, and it was literally transformational for me. And one of the first things that I came away from that program, it was super humbling. I think as a physician, as you go through your training, it's such an intense training. You end up getting sort of a false sense of your abilities or capabilities in other areas. And one of the first things I realized taking that leadership program was, leadership is a science in and of itself. It's a whole field of discipline that is separate, and you don't get exposed to that in your medical training. So, having the opportunity to go through that program, I suddenly looked around. I was like, wow, I wish I had this training way earlier in my career, because I would have done things differently. I would have led teams in the hospital differently. I would have, been a different kind of leader. And so that was really part of the inspiration for making sure that our graduates of the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine would have some of those foundations, so that as they went off to further training and into their early careers, they would be a step ahead and hopefully, meeting the needs of the state as they bring these leadership qualities to the forefront.
And some of these things that you learned, maybe at Gonzaga and also through your career, what are some of those important lessons that you really want to pass on to the students at the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine as they go into their careers?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody appreciates medicine is turning into more of a team sport. We're looking for all healthcare professionals to practice at the top of their license, and we need folks on the team who can help lead and facilitate the team to bring in the best care to patients. And one of the things I think is really important about leading teams is also understanding what it means to be a great team member or a follower. And so, we talk about that a lot, that, if you want to be a great leader someday, you have to learn how to be a great follower and, understand what the needs of followers are so that when you step into that leadership position, you can appreciate, how to take care of your team. So that's a big lesson. I would say the second lesson that we want to teach is it's about relationships. And, you can have a great vision, you can have a great tactical plan about how to achieve that vision. But if you can't inspire or motivate people or understand what their needs are so that they can be ready to participate in, whatever it is you would like them to do, then you'll likely fail. And the way you get to that is you got to have great relationships. So that would be the second thing. And I would say the third thing is you have to really understand yourself, not only as a leader, but as a human being in terms of, what are your values and what are your strengths and what are your shortcomings, because those come across in leadership scenarios all the time. And if you have blind spots, those are the things that, could lead to failure. And so we're constantly asking our students to, do self-assessments and, approach every situation with humility, because that usually is a recipe for success.
That's something that definitely syncs up with things that I've read about leadership in the past too, that ability to self-reflect and to look at one's own weaknesses and strengths with honesty and transparency.
And it's so hard to do. And, there's been studies in the physician literature that show that doctors aren't really very good at that. And I do think it's a learned skill. And so that's what we want to do is, we want to build these foundational skills for our students so that they go off, they get inspired. And, I hope they actually, do more studies into leadership as they go on with their career, because I think it'll really benefit them.
Yeah, certainly. And so now that we've had some students, including our first graduating class in May, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Have you heard from some of the students that you've worked with and now going into their practice? Have you heard from them about the leadership program and what's their response?
We have, and what they say is they feel compared to their colleagues, let's say that are in the residency programs that they have joined, that they feel much more confident in being able to lead small teams, to understand, the relationships that exist in the healthcare setting, not only with patients, but with other care providers, and, how to navigate those relationships and teams better. They feel comparatively much more comfortable, in the workplace setting than they feel they would have otherwise had they not had that leadership training.
That's great. So our WSU College of Medicine is really focused on community-based medical education. It's one of our hallmarks. How does that intersect with leadership education?
Well, I think it just makes so much sense. As a community-based school, we really want our students to understand the communities that they work in. And, that's one of the leadership principles that's really important is, understanding your team, what are their weaknesses, what are their strengths, and, what are things you can do to inspire them. And that's really the same principles are true for our communities. We have to understand, what are their risks in terms of health and wellness, and, how can we motivate them to do better? And also, to what are the challenges that prevent them from getting the care they need? So I think some of those same lessons that we learn in how to be a good leader for a unit or an organization, are easily transferable to the communities that we serve. And so I just, can't wait for our docs to eventually get out and start practicing in those communities, because I really think there will not only be a direct impact from their delivery of healthcare, but I think there could even be a greater impact that they'll bring in leading communities to better health and wellness.
Well, it's really exciting. And I think that you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, we really want our communities and people to be healthy. And so, if anything, this last year and a half has really shown us the desperate need for good leadership in the medical field.
Absolutely. And, I think a part of that gets back to this relationship building. And of course, a part of good relationship building is trust. And, you have to engage in trusting kinds of behaviors to get folks to, develop trust over time. And so, that's one of the things we talk about with our students is it's usually not one big thing that's going to make you a good leader, but it's paying attention to the details. And it's all of those little behaviors that establish trust, that improve relationships, that oftentimes lead to, great leadership results.
Well, it makes me excited to see what they do, as doctors and medical professionals in our communities around Washington and beyond.
Absolutely.
Great. Is there anything else about this leadership education that you'd like our listeners to know about?
Yeah, well, we're taking our leadership training of our medical students to the next level. Right now, we have a certificate for them. So when they graduate, they get their MD and also a certificate in leadership, which is 1/3 of a master's degree. But we're actually building out a whole master's degree in healthcare leadership that will be available not only to our students who graduate, but to any healthcare professional who wants to, improve their leadership skills. And we're looking to have this program be stood up in the next year or two. So we're very excited about taking, sort of our approach to our students and also making it a resource for other healthcare professionals who want to improve their leadership skills.
Well, that is exciting and right in line, I think, with what Washington State University is all about.
Absolutely. Being a land grant institution, it's all about bringing solutions, to the state. And certainly, I think improving the leadership capabilities of all of our currently practicing healthcare professionals who we know are incredibly passionate about, doing the work that they do. That would be a great thing.
Definitely. Well, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
As we age, our lifestyle and history of injuries can catch up to us. Each year, more than 1 million Americans receive total knee or hip replacements, according to data from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, and the average age of patients undergoing this treatment is getting younger. At WSU, researchers in the Jean and Linda Voiland School of Chemical Engineering and Bioengineering are researching ways to use 3D printers to produce artificial cartilage. Deteriorated cartilage is the top cause for total knee replacement, yet our bodies can't produce new cartilage on their own.
My name is Arda Gözen. I'm an associate professor at Mechanical Engineering University at WSU. And my research focuses on 3D printing. A part of it is 3D bioprinting, which is using 3D printing for life sciences. Basically, the general goal of the project is to be able to produce artificial articular cartilage, basically the cartilage that goes into your knees. Unlike most tissues in your body, or cartilage is not able to cure itself essentially because there are no blood vessels going into it. It's basically a thin membrane, but it has so many different functions. When it comes to tissue engineering, you still have to start from something, be it stem cells or actually mature cells. I mean, the combinations of those, our collaborators look into that, for instance. But essentially, there has to be compatibility. Can we print essentially what we call a bioconstruct, people call it scaffold, such that we essentially deposit the necessary materials and cells into those distinct regions, right? So these 3 distinct regions, such that the construct we make is not just like a, homogeneous blob, if you will, but it's an organized structure that mimics the natural tissue.
Articular cartilage can be broken down into 3 zones, each one responsible for a certain task: load bearing, friction reduction, and water resistance. To form cartilage for each of these zones, cells have to experience specific stressors that trigger them to differentiate.
But the idea is, if your final tissue needs to be stiff and hard, then that environment needs to sort of match that so that cells can essentially adapt to that environment when they're growing and proliferating. The natural cartilage, when you're walking, the loading pattern on your knee, right? Take a step, you have a load increase and then it goes down. There's this oscillating pressure that the cells feel. And then the cells feeling that stress, they feel like, okay, I'm in my natural environment, so I can turn into a natural cell.
Gozin says the biggest challenge is replicating a complex structure on such a small scale. But as osteoarthritis affects younger and younger people, the demand for personalized, long-lasting medical intervention is increasing.
There's quite a bit of strength in personalized medicine, again, using your body, but essentially enabling stuff that your body might not just be able to do it by itself because it's not a part of its natural process, right? Example of cartilage. So the cartilage cannot regenerate itself, but we can intervene, essentially, do something outside the body and put that in, essentially, replace your cartilage. There's this growing demand for personalized medicine. Personalized anything is an emerging market. It's marketable because doesn't it sound much better that you will have a drug that might have minimal side effects designed for your needs, for your body's quirks,
3D printing, also called additive manufacturing, started out as a quick and easy way to produce prototypes in the 1980s. But as early as the late 90s, researchers at WCU were studying ways to make finished products with artificial materials and even living tissue. 3D printing opened the door to realizing highly complex designs that simply couldn't be made by hand.
So 3D printing has really interesting, novel stuff to offer to different markets, right? It's quite bottom up because, when you think about the technique to manufacture something, right? Just look back at history. Usually, that technique is first employed in the industry with experts and all that stuff, right? But with 3D printing, before it was even taken seriously in the industry, people had 3D printers in their homes, right? So it's a very reverse type of evolution of a technology. But that doesn't mean that it's going to die. I mean, people thought that because all the manufacturing engineers, because I'm in that community, so I know all the old guns, and they're like, these are kids playing games, right? All of which have shifted their research entirely to additive manufacturing, right? So there's something to it, definitely, but you still need to be cautious. I mean, one of the main issues with 3D printing right now is that bottom-up nature of it. Even though it's exciting, the term that people use is democratizing manufacturing. They don't have to, 3D printers are getting really, really cheap. They start cheap and all that. But at the same time, with many manufacturing methods that make them reliable and usable by large populations, those products that we make essentially are standardization, right? There are these institutes that establish standards as to how to run certain processes, how to design products to match such processes so that your quality is high, high and standard and robust, right? So when things start bottom up, actually it's quite hard to establish those standards because everybody's doing something. It's so hard to consolidate. When it's top down, you sort of start at a singular point, then you enlarge. So that's a challenge, and that's sort of one of the reasons of hesitancy for this technology to move from essentially desktop user, like common user, to industry. But it is happening. Research is going on, standards are being drawn up. Aerospace industries investing enormous amounts of money to 3D printing. And then obviously this bioprinting stuff, which it is getting, I guess, the comparable conventional manufacturing industries, again, medicine manufacturing and all that. It's getting into that domain, and it's making a very strong impression there too. I mean, the number of bioprinting companies that sell bioprinters or companies offer bioprinting services, the number is like uncontrollably growing. I used to be able to keep track of the players. Now I'm not. Like I have to almost check every day, right? So it is successful. There's definitely indications of it being successful, but I mean there needs to be caution with every emerging technology, right? So we'll see where it's going to end up, but all the indications point out. I mean, even myself I was a little bit of a skeptic, but I think it definitely exceeded expectations in terms of its staying power. Let's put it that way.
While their research is still in its early stages, Gozen and his collaborators are making strides that will not only support other projects in their field, but also improve the lives of Americans living with chronic pain.
Thank you for listening to Viewscapes. Music is by Greg Yazanitsky. You can read more about healthcare, engineering, and many other WSU stories at magazine.wsu.edu.